Absolutely. I mean, I love higher education and I love learning. I think most of us do. And so we're constantly looking for something to either add to our professional lives or our personal lives or both. And we'll talk about our motivations for why we applied for a doctorate and why we either have our doctorate or are in the process of getting one. So I will hand it over to our esteemed moderator, Thomas, and then we'll take it from there. So thank you for coming.
I'm good. Thank you all for coming. How are you? Good. So as Marguerite was talking about, kind of the game plan for today is we will talk about and do a little bit introduction of ourselves and why we made the decision to go ahead and go after a doctoral degree, where we are at in that process, and some other pieces of information. And then really, I have a couple of guiding questions to get us started. But if you do have a question at any time or you want someone to go a little bit deeper in something they say, please feel free to raise your hand. Really our approach and hope for this is that is really a dialogue between everybody in the room and us as panelists. We are not the experts, but more of just sharing with you our own journeys and our own reasons why to hopefully give you all some more context and help you all in your decision-making process. So, with that, we will go ahead and we will start, I don't know if we're in alphabetical order, but we're going to start down there at that end with Julie to just do a brief introduction. Name, what you do on campus, why you decided to do the doctorate, and current research interest or focus or where you're at.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name's Julia Augusto, and I am actually a student at Pepperdine University. It's a global access program, so I'm able to go to campus every other month and really long weekends. Right now, the reason why, well, I'll answer the first part. The reason why I wanted to pursue an EDD was after I finished my master's, like many of you, I realized a lot of my colleagues also had masters. And I thought about what table do I want to sit at? How can I affect change in a systemic manner? And I realized that if I want to be at tables with a lot of our colleagues on the academic affairs side, I have to be able to speak their lingo. So I wanted to become an expert in a certain subject area and be able to present myself with the same credentials. So that was kind of the defining moment for me on how to distinguish myself from other colleagues that have masters. And my area of focus is social class and persistence. How does a student's social class of origin impact their ability to persist at a four-year university? The stage I'm at now is preparing for my first proposal defense. So I'm near the end, but not close enough, near the beginning. Is that everything? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Syria Martinez, and I'm the director for the McNair Research Scholars Program on campus. And I just completed my PhD 2 weeks ago. I completed at Claremont Graduate University, which is in Southern California. And one of the reasons I selected that program, so I'll kind of go into that, was because it was for working professionals. So I started my program when I was still working at USC full-time. So that was an opportunity for me to take my classes in the evening. All of the classes started from at 4 o'clock and would go all the way until 10 p.m. So I was able to leave work early and go to class. And then after that, then I focus. Obviously, my research focuses on developmental learning communities in the community college setting. And the reason I selected that topic was because a lot of the underrepresented students in the population that I wanted to work with end up in a community college. So that's what I focus on.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kawami Evans, and I'm an academic coordinator in student housing. Part of the reason why I decided to pursue a doctorate is a few things. Number one, I recognize that research, data, information, and what we think we know changes literally second by second. And there was about a 10-year gap between when I finished my master's and when I started my doctorate. And I knew, especially working with our students, they have a very clever way of reminding us that there's some things that might be out of date in terms of what we think we know. But it really was a cue for me to say that there's ways in which you have to constantly stay engaged and that you have to continue to stay with the learning curve. So I decided to do my doctorate at Drexel University. I'm originally from the East Coast. Drexel just opened up a graduate center, I believe in 2009 in downtown Sacramento. That program appealed to me for lots of reasons. Number one, it's 3 consecutive years, so it's a nonstop program, and I really loved that. They did offer some scholarship money because they were new and really recruiting people to come to their program. But also, too, Drexel has an outstanding reputation, particularly on the East Coast in the Philadelphia area. So being from the East Coast, I wanted to create an opportunity where I could continue to make professional connections on both coasts, just to kind of leave my options open in terms of my career choices. My area of focus is specifically around student affairs work, and how student affairs as a profession is transforming. And my passion is around spirituality. So that's what I did my doctorate on, my dissertation. And it's one of the areas in which I really want to see, have an active presence on college campuses, whether it be public or private, because I think that that's a, important avenue for both students as well as professional staff. So where am I in the process of my program? I just graduated on the 22nd of June. So that feels really good. So thank you.
Hello, again, my name is Marguerite Phillips, and I am one of the assistant directors in student housing. And right now I'm in the Candel program here on campus at UC Davis, and gosh, my story is a little different because I have a lot of different degrees, because I see my journey as more of an individual journey in terms of knowing myself. Like, I just went to Kawami's presentation on spirituality, and I am a big believer in the more you know yourself, the more confident you are, the more you don't care what other people think, and the more focused you are. And so I range from, I have my associate's degree in culinary arts, I have my bachelor's in marketing, and I have my master's in urban and environmental policy. What I came to find out is, because I thought, oh, I want to save the world, and what I found out is it's the individual. If you start with yourself, it just spreads. And so I'm also from the Northeast, and so coming to California, I realized, I'm going to tell you about my focus. At first, it was self-esteem. Again, it kind of relates. I'm realizing that in California, it's very different, the community college system and the four-year institution. In the Northeast, you go to a community college just to get a degree, get your associates in accounting and do your thing. Here, it seems like the community college is a way to transfer into a four-year institution. And so one of my focuses is going to be working in a community college and kind of demystifying higher education. I love, clearly, higher education, but it's not as scary as some people think it is. And I think if you have the high self-esteem, if you know yourself, you'll feel more confident in applying to a four-year institution. And another thing I'm interested in is bridging, how can we collaborate? How can K through 12 schools collaborate with four-year institutions to bring more students in and to talk about retention and to even collaborate with the communities that the four-year institutions are in so they're welcoming to students of color.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. My name is Sherry Atkinson, and my current role is Executive Director of Community Resource Centers here on campus, of oversight for 5 community resource centers. And I am also in the Candel program that Marguerite talked about as well. I am dissertating right now, so I am I've collected my results. I've written one draft of my results chapter, submitted to my chair, waiting for feedback. Anyways, the light at the end of the tunnel is getting closer, so I am excited about that as well, but again, can't come soon enough. So the Candel program is also it's a program here through the School of Education at UC Davis, and is designed for working professionals. So much like other folks talked about that. Sorry, school. We'll hit all the key points of Candel, which was a key component for me in terms of working with my schedule. It was a cohort of folks who are in a similar position, had been out of school for a while, because I had been out of school for about 12 years. So I thought, ooh, I don't even know if I remember how to do this. And so it was a lot of people, kind of re-entering school after a break, and also have been working in education for a long time. So that was a good motivation and structure for me. And the employee discount was a bonus in terms of the money. So that 2/3 off has definitely made it helpful. And the Candel program has also been pretty good about giving grants and things to the students as well to help fund that. So happy to share more about that. later as well. And my research is on student activism, specifically about student protests and administrator responses to student protests. So very juicy. Maybe it's just me. I'm enjoying it, and I didn't use UC Davis as a site of my research. People are like, oh yeah, you got a line. I'm like, no, I can't do that. I'm too close for many reasons. So talking with this issue, which I'm passionate about and am very connected with on our campus, and talking with other administrators and student activists on other campuses has been very rewarding and fascinating. So I'm looking forward to hopefully publishing my results, and I'm always happy to talk more about that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mayra Llamas, and I also work on campus at the Student Recruitment and Retention Center. I've been on campus now for 8 years. My anniversary was the other day, the 17th.
Oh, I forgot. Sorry.
I know. That's okay. She's my boss. Sherry's my boss, too, so it's been very helpful. So too bad she's not going to be the one chairing my dissertation, or else I know I would pass for sure. So again, I'm here at the School of Education in the Condell program, like some of you have shared. And for me, it was over 5 years since I had completed my master's, and just kind of, that thought of like the high school degree is not worth as much as it used to be. The bachelor's degree is, the master's degree is the equivalent of the bachelor's. So I thought, well, I guess the next step is sort of the doctorate program. But I had limitations. I could not relocate, so I couldn't look at other programs, San Francisco or UC, any other system. So I gave myself I said, I'm going to try 2 times. So if I get in, I will do it. So I applied the first time, got in the first time, so I was very happy about that. So more for professional development, and mainly taking my practice to research. So very interested in that, and I think it's been paying off. So currently, I'm working on my dissertation proposal, developing that, but it's taking me longer than I expected because I'm looking at student retention, but there's a lot of different dimensions of that. So finally, I've narrowed down to student of color retention, specifically how it's how the student-initiated retention programs impact that through the student perceptions, the participants' perceptions. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Thomas Witcher. I work with sororities and fraternities here on campus. For those of you that may have not picked that up already in the 2 other presentations I've been a part of, but digress. For me, when I was, I born and raised in California, did 6 years in purgatory outside of the state, and so when I was getting ready to transition back, when they accepted me back in, I knew for me in my job selection in the institution that I wanted to go to is I wanted to start a doctoral program. Don't have a house payment, don't have a kid, don't have a dog, and I was like, well, if it doesn't happen now, it's probably going to be a while, because once those things started, I knew that they would probably take more time. And so for me, that was a decision to go ahead. And also for the Candale program, I am just completed. We're starting our 2nd year. I'm in the same cohort as Marguerite. I'm very attracted to the cohort-based model. That is how I did my master's degree program, and so very much enjoyed that program, or that model, in terms of having a team to rely on. And then also a program for working professionals, because I'm still working full-time on campus, and so the schedule very much met kind of what I was looking for. In terms of research interest, it's kind of all over the place. It originally started out at looking at pipelines, and students had that, how they matriculate through pipelines, but then I quickly realized that if I was going to do that, it would have to be very, 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 very specific, and I wasn't really willing to get to look at, like, between 7th and 8th grade at this school in this county, and I was like, yeah, I'm not looking to get that specific, but I also don't want to be 10 years writing a dissertation, and so have since jumped, do have an interest in looking at collective bargaining and the relationships between organized labor and their host institution, which is very much similar to the work that I do, the relationship between fraternities and sororities and their host institutions. So there's some natural connections there, but as we were chatting over lunch, I have no idea what the research question in that is, so talk to me next month. It may be different, I don't know, but that's where I'm at. So before we get started with the questions, anybody in the audience have any burning questions? Okay. So for our panel, what were some of the challenges that you encountered when you started this journey for the doctoral degree? And anybody can go first, whoever hits the button.
Got it. Probably there were three really big challenges that have impacted me in my journey. First was I thought that I was a really good writer, and I wasn't. I had always done well, but I went to public school on the East Coast, and when I got to the doctoral program, I just realized my writing, I wasn't putting my thoughts together, I wasn't using transition words. So being very aware of your faults, your own academic faults, and then improving on them. It was kind of an ego blow, but it was really good because I've improved leaps and bounds since. The second thing that I would say has been probably it's been an issue the whole time and even now, is I think for a lot of us in student affairs, and speaking directly for myself, I'm really passionate about my work. It's hard sometimes to turn off my mind from work and to now open up a journal and read this and understand this, this jargon and write it. Like sometimes I go home and I'm still focused on a conversation I had with a student, or I'm responding to an email, work-related. So for me, it's balancing, remembering that, doing my own work is just as important as helping the students, but I don't turn it off as easily. And the last challenge that I had, well, from the top three, was in my program, I was the only person of color. I was the only person of color. There were a few females in my cohort, but definitely being the only person of color, for me, I felt a lot of times when things would come up, I was like, well, here I'm that person again. Did you think how that would impact the rest of us? So being okay with being the squeaky wheel and putting into practice the things that I often say to the students, it was interesting being on the other side of that and realizing that I have to live up to that. So those are my three.
I like how Julie narrowed it down to three, so I'm going to do the same thing. I had to unlearn how I had learned in the past. It doesn't work. It didn't work for me. It wasn't working. The second thing that's related is, so I would come home from late nights, as we all do, you know what we're talking about, and I wanted to shut it off. I didn't know when the heck, I'm thinking, okay, I have reading to do, but I'm really, really tired and I haven't had dinner. And what I discovered was I can't shut it off. It has to become a part of me. I have to just accept that's the deal. You do a little bit at a time. It's not a burden. I think I treated it like taking out the garbage or having to clean the bathroom. But now it's a passion of mine. I thought, why aren't I treating it like a passion of mine? And it's wonderful. I'm more relaxed, and I just live it and breathe it, and I try to apply everything in class, all the readings, to the work that I do now, because it always can. You can always do that. Because right now we talk a lot about K through 12, and it's amazing how much you can relate K through 12 to higher education. And then the other thing was balance, in terms of, another thing I've changed is, again, because it's only my cat, me and my cat, and I would feel guilty saying how tired I was because our friends in the cohort have children and partners, and it was me and my cat. But I had every right to be just as tired, I had every right to be just as stressed. And this year, cleaning company once a month, Safeway delivering groceries, doesn't cost more, by the way. They don't accept tips, and it's the same price. You can use your card. And I feel like an advertisement. But but it's been so helpful to face those challenges and relearn and learn better and incorporate it into my life.
I'll go next. As I mentioned earlier, this topic around spirituality is huge for me. And in the way in which I set up my life, I told a friend of mine this a few months ago, and he laughed almost hysterically. But I really do set up my life in such ways that I don't have a lot of pressure. I do. Because for me, that means that there's a certain quality of life in which I'm able to show up and participate, not only for myself, but for those who I interact with. That really means a lot to me, and it becomes part of my spiritual practice. So the thing that was really hard about the doctoral program for me is that there's a persistent, consistent, unrelentless psychological and emotional presence that gets exhausting, that never goes off until you walk across the stage. And that's something that I did not, look at all of my colleagues. that was something that I did not factor in terms of its impact. Now, the thing that I did not say is that I have a 6-year-old daughter who is just as rambunctious as they come. And I also have my partner, and my partner is also finishing up his second master's degree. So, so my level of presence, availability, access at times was really limited, and I had to be very honest about that. Sometimes I'd be just straight up crabby because I just needed some reprieve. And don't get me wrong, there are points in which you get that, but after working, a full day, come home, do the other things that you need to do, and then know that you need to turn it up to engage academically, in this thing. That can have its impacts, especially over long periods of time. For some of us, our programs are, 3, 4, 5 serial. I know, it took a while. So I think just really being really honest and realistic with yourself about that kind of impact, I think is really important, really, really important. And then the other factor was just the time. Knowing that, a lot of us are on the grind Monday through Friday with work stuff, to know that large chunks of my weekends would go to writing was difficult. It was a difficult, conscious decision that I had to make while my daughter is pulling out my skirt saying, "Mom, let's go to the park," and of course, I would do that with her sometime, but there was also a lot of times where I'd say, "Mas, I need you to activate because I can't do that right now." That was really, really difficult. So those things were the hardest things for me, and I definitely echo what Julie said around the whole writing piece. I think I'm a decent writer, and when I would get some of the feedback back about my writing, I was like, how did I even survive this long? How is it that I'm even in a professional career if there's this much red ink on my paper? I'm serious. So the good thing is that I do think that I am a much stronger writer, but I do feel grateful for, that kind of feedback. Sometimes in the moment, I'm like, you could keep all that. I don't want to hear it right now, but overall, I am grateful for that. So I think it's a lot to contend with just mentally, psychologically, and in terms of your time.
I just want to mention one thing. I think you guys have covered a lot there, and I agree with all of it. The other thing is the financial piece. Really taking into account, if you're going to work full-time, how are you going to pay for this doctoral degree, whether it's a PhD or an EDD? Because most programs, at least for my PhD, if you're not going full-time, I can't work as a research assistant. I can't work as a teaching assistant. I already have a full-time job. So you have to be very persistent in looking for outside funding and applying for, research to get paid for. So that's a huge piece, I think, to take into account of how are you going to pay for this? Are you going to take out all loans? Because there is no more undergraduate financial aid at this level. If you're not working as a graduate student research assistant or a TA, how are you going to pay for it? So I think that in itself is a challenge, that aside from my full-time job, doing my research, I'm also applying for funding opportunities to pay for my education so that I'm not inundated with loans by the time that I was done. So that's just one thing to think about.
I think for me, the challenge was, and I say this like I do it all the time, but that's really not the truth, is when I finally got to a spot where I treated it like a job, and I think as some people shared, is you've just got to get in the rigid schedule. If you work your hours at work, you come home, you give for me, it was giving myself all right, I got 2 hours to eat. If I got to take a power nap, if I got to do whatever else, sometimes that's 90 minutes, but turn around and be like, I have to at least carve out at least 60 minutes, if not 2 hours each night, whether it's reading, outlining a paper, but some way engaging in coursework to make it a regular part of my routine. And that's when I realized I've been most successful in being able to go back to the classroom and engage, versus on the flip side is you just feel everything's coming at you at once. And so being able to plan those things out. Anybody got any questions? Anybody? Ooh.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you don't have to yell. So I think it's really fantastic that they have programs where you can work full-time and go to school, but did any of you consider putting your career on hold to go back to school full-time and do that option? Or did that conversation kind of take place, or was it just because the programs were available that you didn't have to really make that choice, if that makes sense?
I actually wanted to do that. But a lot of the programs that really matched my interests were made for working professionals. Specifically, when you start looking for a lot of student affairs stuff, they know that you're dating the work, so the majority of the ones, especially the ones that I was interested in, were for working professionals. But I was open to both, because I was hoping to get my school paid for and have a part-time job on campus, but it didn't work out that way.
To the challenges, I think what all of you said, I'm like, yeah. For me was my family obligations. She was a preschool, my daughter, I have one daughter, preschooler. My mom moved in to help, but at the same time needed a lot of I missed my mom, not living with her for so many years, that it's a good relationship that vamos a la tienda, she's like, let's go. So I kind of had to carry multiple hats, the boss lady hat, the mommy hat, the academic student, whatever that was, and La Mayra, because my family refers to me as La Mayra. So, because they're always calling and such, so it just a lot of different things going on, but at the same time, in all the different family obligations, I found support. So you also have to think about, for me, family obligations meant a challenge, but at the same time was that they were all very supportive as well.
I actually thought about that piece that you just asked as far as going full-time, but at the time that I was looking at programs, I was already far into my career that I would take a big pay cut, and I had bought a home. So, and I had asked my parents to move in with me because I'm mostly not home, I'm working all the time, so I asked them to move in with me. So at that point, I felt guilty asking them to move out so that I can go to school full-time. And I completed my master's at the University of Southern California, so that was one of the places I wanted to stay for my PhD, but they said I would have to go full-time. I looked at UCLA, I looked at Columbia University, but again, they were all full-time. So at that point, I had to make that choice. Am I going to take a pay cut, ask my parents to move out, and go back to where they were? And I wasn't willing to do that at that point. So that was a sacrifice I had to make for myself, but I found the perfect, so again, as you're looking, at least for my PhD program, it was about finding the perfect faculty mentor. And she was excellent, she was doing the work that I wanted to do, so it was a perfect match. So I always tease, it's almost like a marriage for the next 5 years because this is a person you're working very closely with. So she was a perfect match for the research that I wanted to conduct. So it worked out, actually, it worked out for me. But I did consider that. And I spent about a year looking at different programs and doing my research about faculty I wanted to work with specifically. So.
One of the other things, if I could just respond to your question about considering leaving your full-time job to pursue academics, is that I would encourage you to do your research on the program, because some programs are structured in such a way where doing just the coursework is doable, that you don't really need to leave your full-time job. I know for myself, and I think for some of my colleagues, the place where you want to be able to be fully available for the work is when you're writing. So if looking at programs to determine, is it best for you to have to, be available full-time all 3 years or just the last year? So for me, if I had a choice, I would have loved to just be able to write consistently that last year, if I could have. So definitely do your research to find out what's the academic demand.
So we're talking about doing research, figuring out what program you'd want to do. Is there like a search engine of like really good programs? No, you just have to kind of find your way. That to me is the biggest challenge. It's like, how do I find the program that would be the right fit, or what I would want to, there seems so many different factors to take into consideration.
I think I'll kind of start that off. I think it depends what you're looking for, kind of building off the previous question. Are you willing to up and move and go somewhere, or are you confining yourself geographically to this area? Because I think that's two different things that you're using to make your decision making. If you're looking specifically for higher ed or education, there are a number of professional organizations that have listing of graduate preparation programs nationally. And so, tapping into those websites, you can easily get a list of what's going on if you want more of a national focus in looking at. If you're looking more geographically, and I will probably miss some, but I will look to my colleagues here. I know here within driving distance within the Sacramento area, it's UC Davis, Drexel University, USC. I don't know if they still have their program. They used to do an EDD distance program out of the Sacramento Center. I heard it got discontinued, but I heard they may be bringing it back, so I don't really know. I know Sac State does have a doctoral program as well. Bradman University, I think, is out of the East Bay area. University of San Francisco, I do believe, has a program. I don't know if they do that out of the Sacramento Center or if you have to go to the Bay Area for that. And that's, Berkeley does have one as well. I'm not sure if San Francisco State does. They do, so, yeah. So those are geographically, if you're looking to stay in the Northern California area. But yeah, I'll defer if anybody else has
And I
any.
think, yeah, and if you are looking for education, we probably could help to point you in the right direction because we've done some of that research. I think for me, how I made my decision, I knew I wanted to stay working full time, and so the closest thing, and I have my master's in higher ed and student affairs, and there's not really a lot that really is just higher ed in this area. Drexel is the one that has that, and so I went to their info session, and I went to the UC Davis School of Ed Candell info session. So besides doing the research online, and just got a feel for kind of the values of the program and what felt, and kind of the approaches, the things they had to offer to make my final decision of which one I felt like I clicked more with too. So that's another piece of the research I would encourage too, if you can, if it's accessible to go to like an info night or something.
Yeah, but was somebody else going to go first? Okay, we'll just move forward. Well, first of all, for myself, I wanted to say that I really enjoyed school, and I'm one of those guys that people like look at weird when you say I love physics. But I really enjoyed school. But I've established myself as kind of like a subject matter expert in my field already without the graduate degree. And to what extent do you get the degree for the status of having the degree, or do you pick something that's somewhat similar in another like close field that allows you to have both like that subject matter expert and the status of the degree?
Something that I've learned is at least with the EDD, I'm pretty good at my job, but I don't have the theory to back it up. And so for me, it's more about having more holistic knowledge of a subject matter that I think I know and examining and questioning. It's a lot about questioning what you think you know. Physics is a little bit different because it's numbers and whatnot. But in general, ideas that you have that you thought you knew could be turned completely upside down. So that, to me, I'm not about status personally, but it does get me into community college. It gets me to my career goal.
Something that one of my professors said to me was, this can be a $60,000 degree or can be a $6 million degree. And what he meant by that was, you know, a lot of us, we were already in our fields, and, you know, some of my classmates were in the fields for 15, 20 years, so they have expertise in their niche area. But he told us to focus on the journey. It's a little different because you're doing physics, but okay, then this may apply. A lot of what I've really learned and what's, I think, changed me, been transformational, was some of the activities and working with my colleagues and, you know, coming home at night, as Kwame was saying, and balancing, like, I'm drained, this is mentally draining, but how am I going to get through it? That's what I feel has been the most transformational and made me a better person, more so than the initials that I'll hopefully have after my name at some point.
I actually worked as an advisor for computer science at USC with PhD students. And one of the things that we would tell our students, and our department chair would say, is it's a matter of, one of the exercises is look on the website or look on the newspaper, what type of job do you want to hold? Does it require a PhD? If it doesn't, if you don't need to become an expert that needs the theory to back it up or, you know, do some other things, then you don't really need a PhD because it is a long journey. So even I work with students who I encourage to get their PhD in their field, and I work with STEM students, and one of the things I say, do you have the passion for it? If you don't have the passion for it, you're not going to make it to the end, because this is about how many hoops can you jump through, and are you going to make, and that's how I felt about it, because I know I can do the work, but it was right when you get to one point, something else would happen. And it's okay, am I gonna push through? Am I gonna finish? But I have a passion for the work that I do. And that goes to any field. So any of the students that I work with, I say, what is your passion? What is your drive? What's motivating you to get this degree? It can't just be because of the letters behind your name. But also, like we said before, what table do you want to be at? And sometimes that PhD, I notice now that like some people do treat me differently, and I feel weird because I'm not even used to being called doctor yet. So, but I am invited to different places because of the 3 letters behind my name. So I was looking at where do I want to be, and what my mentor, actually, my faculty advisor actually made me look up, and that was my first exercise to say, what type of jobs do you see yourself at 10, 20 years from now, and what does it require? If it doesn't need a PhD, does it need an EDD, then we can decide what you need to do. But do it for the passion, not for the letters behind it.
So I guess my question goes to the faculty mentor and selecting kind of your research area and kind of some of the challenges of looking at that. Because, you know, when you look at a website and you see, oh, this faculty member does this and that, and you could go talk to the faculty member and you're like, yeah, this is the driest thing I've ever heard. Even though I love the subject matter, but the way it comes across. So how did you all go about kind of discovering which faculty members really appeal to you in combination with the program and its values as well as your specific research interest? I guess that's a lot of stuff, but.
Share a little bit of that. For the Condell program here at UC Davis, since it doesn't have a higher ed focus, they're starting to. I didn't go in looking at faculty and researching the faculty. I just kind of was like, I got in, woo, and then figured things later, right? Figured things out later. But for me, finding the faculty mentor to work with on my dissertation was not about the subject or their expertise, was about how I can work with them. So I found a faculty member who I can work really closely with my writing. The fact that he's able to give me very thoughtful writing, I'm like, this is it, this is the match, right? Because for me, I feel the expert in my topic. I just need that support to really, be now a researcher. So he was able to do that for me. So I didn't really look for topic match or anything like that. For me, it was like, what support do I need and who can give me that?
Yeah, I think for me it's similar in that, because I had gotten that advice too. Look for the faculty you want to work with and kind of go towards those programs, and that made a lot of sense. But at the same time, I was like, well, I'm going to go here or here, and then like Myra said, there wasn't necessarily a higher ed focus, so there were a couple higher ed people, but. So if that's the case, I think Myra's advice is good in that. And I found my chair through the classwork as you get to know the faculty and who's, you learn their styles, you learn kind of what my style, yeah, and also who's, even if it's not like a direct link to my interest, like my chair, I picked him because he was excited about my topic. Like, even just in class discussions, he was like, oh, yeah, this is really good. And he'd get excited about it. So I was like, oh, this is good. I need that. So keep me going. And so that was kind of how I did it. And it was more in the process. And so I don't know if that's a nature of an EDD program versus PhD and how that works. And if you can pick up and move, if I wanted to go work with the premier person on student activism. And I don't even know who that is. I probably should. But I didn't do that. So.
One of the things I would say also too, as you're looking at programs, really be considering the newness of them, because Drexel, when I first started, they had just opened up their graduate center in Sacramento here, and they were still building their faculty, so there wasn't a whole lot to choose from in terms of who was going to be my faculty chair. I think I had a little bit of say based upon the classes that I had taken with faculty. And that was helpful, but for the most part, it was kind of designated for you. One of the things that I would say kind of made me nervous at first, but was a blessing in disguise. So as I was creating my committee, we have to have 3 on our committee. So 2 internal for Drexel and then 1 external person. And the first I had my chair already set, but my other internal person from Drexel, some things happened, things kind of got funky, and I needed another person. Well, this faculty person who was new, because at that point I had already finished my coursework, this new faculty person had come in, and they were like, oh yeah, you should have, Dr. Carpenter sit on your committee. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I feel like I had some good direction from my committee chair. Well, come to find out, keep in mind that my topic is around spirituality, come to find out, she's like, I wouldn't say she's an atheist, but she is like very non-spiritual. So I didn't find this out until, of course, I'm getting ready to do my proposal, and she's asking me these pointed questions. And at first, I was like, how did this happen? How did she end up being on my committee? But let me tell you, because of her input, because of her questioning, because of her critique, my writing and also my thinking around spiritual matters has sharpened immensely. So I say that to say, it's not always the likely people who you think are going to be the best fit for your committee, whether it be in chairship or not. I think there's a lot of other factors to consider as well as you think about that, your committee and the setup of that.
So we've got like 3 minutes left. So does anybody have any burning last questions? Go ahead, Chris.
Julie and Syria, you mentioned the journey where you see yourself sitting. I just wanted to ask, where do you all see yourself sitting in the future, and what position, and is your PhD EDD necessary for that?
Initially, I thought I wanted to be the president of a university. That has shifted, I think. And I think it's ever changing. I think, as I've gone through this journey, I'm still going back and forth between, do I want to apply for a faculty job now? And if so, obviously I need the PhD because I would want to be at a Research One university. So that's something I'm still toying around with, and I have some mentors who are trying to help me. I'm trying to publish my work now. I've submitted for conferences, so I'm starting to present my work more often and building my CV to, if it comes to that point, that I can make that transition and it wouldn't be as hard. And the other thing is I'm, thinking about consulting, so doing some educational consulting, starting my own business as well. So I think just after going through the journey, you just feel like you can do anything. If you've gone through this, you can do anything. And I just feel like there's just room for me to go so many different ways, but I still haven't decided. I'm enjoying the work that I'm doing here as a director of McNair. So, but I think I've gotten a lot of phone calls now for different jobs of, high-level positions that people do want, but I'm not, so that's another thing now, I'm not willing to relocate out of California. So that's one of my limitations that I've decided. I've been in Southern California, worked there for a while. Now I'm here in Northern California, and I've decided that I want to stay in California. So if I'm even going to consider a faculty position, which is very limited because those obviously tenure track, people die in those positions. So it would have to be in California. So I'll be ready when that time comes, I think.
In full transparency, when I first started on this journey, I was thinking I wanted to be like a vice chancellor or something like that. After being at this point in the journey, I think I feel more confident in my abilities and skills, and I don't necessarily see that as my trajectory, but I feel like I can attain it if I so choose to. But now I'm thinking more maybe a 3-tiered career, maybe still doing what I'm doing now, where I have a lot of direct contact with the students. Maybe possibly doing some teaching, like some online courses, because my program is halfway online. It's a hybrid program, and maybe some consulting. But it does change. It does change. I feel really good that I know what I'm talking about now with some theory behind it, but I don't necessarily know if I want to be in that seat because there's so many politics to affect change. I see myself more affecting change on the individual level. That's what feels good to me. So it changes.
All right, with that, we are out of time. I do have our email addresses up here. If you do have any further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us. We are more than happy to help you in your own decision-making process and finding the best fit for you, and thank you all for coming today.